The preseason AP All-American list is out, and there's only one player from the state of Utah on it. Is that fair or foul? We're breaking it down on this Locked On Utes, Locked On Cougars crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes and Locked On Cougars your first listen and view of the day. I'm JT Wistrcill, excited to be joined on today's crossover by Jake Hatch. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the state of both athletic directors that we have going on between Utah's Mark Harlan and Brian Santiago. It's an interesting time right now with how the fans are feeling. Also, got to talk about the latest AP poll, the first of the year that is out, BYU over Utah. How should we feel about that? And only one place we could start with All-Americans dropping today. But first, want to remind you guys today's episode is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, you can download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON, all caps, no spaces, to get $10 when you trade $10. Jake Hatch, you are the only one with an All-American from Utah or BYU. I got to be honest, I think this is totally fair. Probably a player or two at BYU could have a little stronger of a gripe. I don't know if Utah has anyone returning with a preseason All-American candidate. I think all Big 12, Utah had some gripes there. All-American, I'm not too fired up for Utah. How are you feeling about BYU only having one on?
I'm not surprised by it, honestly. It's LJ Martin as their star running back, and he's the reigning offensive player of the year in the Big 12 conference. So he is the best offensive weapon this league has. If he's not on that All-American list, I'd actually be like, okay, what does he need to do to really prove himself outside what he's already done? The biggest thing to understand about this, JT, is while there may be Utah fans and BYU fans say, why aren't there more representatives of this on these All-American teams? Well, the AP only does 2 teams, so there are a grand total of 46 slots, give or take 1 or 2. There's not a lot of players, and you have 130 some odd FBS teams, and we're talking about a league. Speaking of the Big 12, it's just a simple fact of life. We're currently dealing with the fact that they're third fiddle behind the Big 10 and the SEC, with 2 major networks in ESPN and Fox that want to pump those 2 leagues seemingly over all else. So I'm not surprised by it in the least, but I think the bigger thing here, and I'll get your thought on this, is as the season progresses, should LJ Martin live up to that billing? I wouldn't be surprised to see him at the end of the season as an All-American. The bigger question, and I guess the bigger honor in my mind, is, okay, at the end of the season, there's 1 or 2 of these BYU players that aren't on the list right now, or Utah players. Are they being honored as All-Americans at the end of the year? Because preseason's one thing, but you have to go out there and prove it on the field if they truly want to be named an All-American for the 2026 season.
Absolutely, and that's where, whether it's preseason or after the season, Utah will have an uphill battle. I think Devon Dampier has a chance to be a really good quarterback this year. I'd be surprised if he's a top 5 quarterback in the country, so he's probably not getting on this list. Wayshawn Parker's a really good running back. I think he could be a top 10 back and maybe challenge LJ Martin, but Martin deserves that spot, and as of right now, I would say LJ Martin going to go on to have a better year. Utah's wide receivers should be better. All-American? No, we can't go there. Even someone like me who's higher on this group. Defensively, maybe Lance Holtzclaw comes out of nowhere. Like last year, a John Henry Daly. You could argue Holtzclaw may have the best chance for anyone for Utah. Jackson Benny, maybe, but it's just a big leap. I know he gets the interceptions, and he does look bigger. You were at Utah's media availability not too long ago. Like, these guys definitely have gotten bigger and stronger, which is a good thing, but it's going to be an uphill battle for Utah to get another guy on this list, just like it is each year. It does feel like BYU could have a guy or 2 more, though, Jake, especially like maybe that inside linebacker spot with a couple of the guys they got there.
Yeah, well, the one guy I was kind of wondering about, because of all his production at the collegiate level so far, is Kedu Luave, and he has gotten a lot of aplomb, a lot of people saying that he is a major pickup for BYU. If you look at like the top transfers list for the Big 12 or just in college football in general, he routinely was on that list. And this is a guy who was a freshman All-American when he was out at Cal. He's had back-to-back years of being just an absolute stud in that Cal defense. I think some people may have left him off of their All-American ballot because of the transfer. He's going from Cal to BYU. You don't know necessarily what he's going to be at BYU, but you knew what he was at Cal. And that he'd probably be the one person outside of LJ Martin that I would say, hey, had any argument to potentially be named to this team. But let's acknowledge a spade for a spade. There are 8 linebacker spots at the very most on these All-American teams. And when you have as many top-rated players and programs that are out there, it's going to be really tough to find your name on that. But I'm not out of the realm of possibility that by the end of the year, he can find himself as an All-American at linebacker if he goes out and if he plays the same type of way he played at Cal. This is a guy who's capable of putting up triple digits in tackles. And if you do that, you're going to firmly be in the mix for people when it comes to All-American teams at the end of the year. But I'll go back to my original point. He's got to go out there and prove it. He's obviously got to coexist with guys like Isaiah Glasker and Siale Acera, who kind of figure to be that starting trio of linebackers. But they've also added a former Big 12 standout in Jake Clifton, who's pushing him for time. So he may find playing time at BYU a little more sparse in terms of having more of a rotation than he did at Cal, and that could thereby hurt his credibility and his candidacy for All-American teams. And I guess the one other player I would bring up on this, you mentioned the fact you have a hard time believing that a guy like Devon Dampier would be, let's say, a top 5 quarterback in the country. Well, a lot of people, I think, would say, hey, what about Bear Bachmeier? And my thing is similar to you. With so many quarterbacks in day and age that are so prominent, Bear Bachmeier he's a really, really good player. But my opinion is he probably this year, if he goes out and has the type of season I think Cougar fans are expecting him to have, let's say he pushes it to 3,500 total yards passing, 4,000 yards passing, he may find himself as like an honorable mention type deal. But then going into next season, you may see him on the preseason All-American hype train. And that's where things kind of lie here is he's still got time on his side. He's going into a true sophomore year. So he doesn't have to make an All-American team right now. Whereas if you're Devon Dampier, this is it. Like you get one shot at this if you're gonna live. Oh, okay, good point. I guess the 5th year. Okay. Has he even acknowledged that? By the way, has he even said he's considering it?
He said he was no. I don't think he plans on right now. I mean, Jake, let's just be honest though. Like, and I love Devon Dampier. I think he's being 100% honest. Well, I think he's banking on having a good season and being a high draft pick in the NIL world and everything that happens there. I ain't letting that. I'm not saying Devon Dampier hasn't. He said what he said. I'm just saying I know what these guys think right now is I'm going to the league. And then it's, hey, this is where your draft protection is. And this is how much you can make if you enter the transfer portal. So that's all I'm saying on Dampier. I've seen it happen time and time again. And I'll throw it back to you with this. I'm a big fan of Bachmeier. If he's on this list, that would be incredible. I mean, we're talking about he'd be a top 3 quarterback in the country this year. I think he's really good, and he had one of the best true freshman seasons I've seen in quite some time. For him to be, even if he like ended up on this by sometime next year, that's a massive accomplishment.
Well, yeah, because you're right. You are among the best of the best at your position, and we all know how quarterback-driven college football is in this day and age. You're competing with the likes of an Arch Manning, a Julian Sayin. Think of just the who's who of quarterbacks. I'm not even thinking of like Jaron Kaoe Sagapula-Tele out there at Cal, for example. Like he may not even be an All-American, and he's a phenomenal quarterback in my mind. Darius Mensah down at Miami. Like there are so many guys at quarterback. I'm just saying if Bear has aspirations, and I don't know that he does, he's actually a pretty low-key dude, honestly. In all my interactions, I'd be hard-pressed to think that he's ever going to say, I want to be an All-American and make it so. But I think that if he has the type of year I think he's capable of having, he could find himself popping up on the list of people that people consider for such All-American citations.
I think Noah Fafita, Drew Mestermaker, Devon Dampier, and Bear Bachmeier, if any of those guys are the Big 12's first team quarterback, not AP, I don't think those are AP All-Americans, but just taking it back even a little level, I think any of those guys could be the first team Big 12 quarterback this year. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And you can't even discount potentially an Avery Johnson. If Colin Klein can unlock him at Kansas State, who'd say he couldn't climb into that conversation? Cutter Boley down there at Arizona State with what Arizona State's done with quarterbacks in the past. There are a lot of quarterbacks who have a lot of chance, I guess, a good chance to go out there and become that type of player. But the 4 you mentioned, they'd be my short list for Big 12 Big 12 quarterback of the year.
Yeah, a conference loaded with talented signal callers. A conference also loaded with talented teams. I think some more of them should have even been on the AP top 25. BYU they're over Utah. How are we feeling about that? We're going to debate it next on this Locked On Utes, Locked On Cougars crossover. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Kalshi. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. College football is almost back, and it's going to be an incredible NFL slate too. If you think your team is going to make the playoffs this season, right now you can get in on all of the action at Kalshi. You can head over today on Kalshi, because on Kalshi you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position, trade the draft, pick the game, and more on Kalshi. You can download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON, all caps, no spaces, to get $10 when you trade $10. That's KALSHI. Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory today. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Utes and Locked On Cougars your first listen and view of the day. Jake Hatch, the AP poll dropped back on Monday, and Utah was behind BYU. Not shocking, not surprising.
I was going to say, are you shocked? Like, you shouldn't be shocked, right?
I'm not. BYU at 14, Utah at 21. I think this is fair. I think you could, to me, I would have Utah over Tennessee, because Utah actually knows who their quarterback is right now. Call me crazy. I think that should be, you're going to be in the top 25, and Tennessee could get there, but they don't know who their starting quarterback is. I think that's a little interesting there. But either way, I think BYU does deserve to be the second best Big 12 team right now. I think this is a fair ranking. I imagine you feel the same way. I mean, did you think they should have been bet over the Tech? Where you at with that?
No, I wasn't going to pick them over Texas Tech, because until you knock Texas Tech off their perch, where they're considered by many to be the Big 12's best, you have to earn that right to be ranked ahead of them. And BYU will get that opportunity if things go well this year. If they make a run to the Big 12 title game and make a repeat appearance there at AT&T Stadium, that would open the door for them to, supplant or just usurp that power from the Red Raiders. But until you do that, I don't think you can make any argument to hand that crown over to BYU. The thing about it is, I called it on my show, I call it the Goldilocks position for BYU, because think about it this way, JT. BYU can still, if Kalani Sitake feels like he needs to, he can still play the respected disrespect card with his team, saying, hey, they still think you guys are right there on the doorstep of the playoff, but not good enough to be inside the top 12. Like, you can play that card. And then on the flip side, remember, BYU started the last 2 years unranked and made a run to whether they were 12th or 13th in the college football playoff final rankings, and found themselves just on the outside due to the fact you have to put a G5 champion into the field. They have been right there on the doorstep, and they've done that coming from unranked both of the last 2 years. The fact that they're inside the top 15 right now opens that door in a major way, where if they just kind of maintain where they're at and move up a handful of slots, they could find themselves in the playoff mix. So I call it the Goldilocks zone, because you can play both sides of this coin if you're Kalani Sitake.
He does the most with the least, right, Jake?
Oh, okay. Yeah, just ask him, right? No, that's the thing about this is, relative to what BYU has been, think about it, like going back to even their independent era, they always tried to say that we're Power 5 adjacent. Well, now that was down to Power 4. Now they're an actual Power 4 program, and it took them all of 1 year. They had one losing season. They went 5-7 in 2023. They've responded the last 2 years with a combined record of 23-4, JT. And that shows how quickly BYU has built themselves into one of the Big 12's finest. Now, does that mean that they are national title caliber? Does that mean they're playoff caliber? Well, they've been on the doorstep of the playoff. The biggest thing I think this year for BYU is to break into that field. And I think it's a similar circumstance for Utah. Utah has been on top of the Pac-12, and during that era, it was the 4-team playoff. So they found themselves not necessarily being able to break through. Utah's in a similar circumstance here with Morgan Scully. If he wants to go out and make a very positive first impression, well, lead Utah to, let's say, an 11-win season and punch your ticket to the college football playoff. That would have Ute fans feeling just absolutely over the moon about things. But correct me if I'm wrong here, that feels like it's kind of the step that both of these programs, that's kind of the next step they need to take. Both of them have been, in many respects, championship caliber. Now you want to be playoff caliber and actually find yourself in it, playing for a national title.
Yeah, I think both these teams would consider it still a successful season if they make the Big 12 title game. It's tough to do that. And I understand if you guys made it again and fell short against Tech, maybe it's different. Maybe you guys would say disappointment. I still feel like when you get in that exclusive of a club, then it's still a success anyways, though. But making history, like you said, for both these programs isn't just winning a Big 12 title, which would be historic because they haven't done that. It's punching your ticket to the CFP. And I do feel like that's what both these teams have their sights on. And regardless of what I feel about BYU or Utah, I just do feel like both these teams absolutely have a shot to make the college football playoff this year with the talent they have on their rosters.
Well, sure, and they should have that expectation, or at least that goal in mind as what they're chasing. Trust me, BYU, their players have been open about the fact that the next step for us, is to make the playoff. The thing about it is, we watched last year, BYU lost to Texas Tech in Lubbock, and that I think put a major rain cloud over their chances of going to the college football playoff. And then you hear the talking heads. Alabama played in the SEC championship game, and that didn't hurt their opportunity to go to the playoff. But when you talk about BYU, well, they got beat twice by Texas Tech. Okay, either conference championship games actually matter or they don't, because you can't pick and choose here. Either the SEC title game, which did not hurt Alabama's chances, but it hurts BYU when they play in the Big 12 title game. You can't have it both ways. And I think that's the one thing that the Big 12 as a whole, Utah included, will be fighting against, is you are always going to be fighting an uphill battle in the respect category. I would love to see two teams from the Big 12 make the playoff, but it feels like in so many ways that it may take, let's say you have a 12-0 Texas Tech, an 11-1 BYU, or 11-1 Utah, and they're going to that Big 12 title game. Texas Tech is all but locked up their slot, and you have to have the right combination of wins and obviously the national cachet to find yourself, even if you lose in that Big 12 title game, because apparently it's going to hurt your chances if you're BYU or Utah to break through. But that's the goal here. You've got to go out there and prove it on the field. And we have a long season ahead of them actually having to prove every week that they're capable of doing just that.
And you can't just prove it by winning. You have to win in an impressive fashion. And I think that's where it hurt BYU at times. And this is where I did feel for the Cougars, and I've said this multiple times before. For them to not be included in the discussion at the end of the year was disgusting. I thought it was so bad that they couldn't even get on the graphic. That was a bad look. At the time, I didn't feel like they were one of the 12 best, though, based on how the results had played out. And it's the same reason I didn't feel like Texas should belonged in the discussion, because of games against Kentucky, because of some of these games against Mississippi State as well, where it's just like you're not as impressive. And once again, BYU was a really good team last year, but a game like a Colorado game, and it's the way you lost to Tech both times that gave them the reason they could throw you off the graphic. Wasn't fair, but I do feel like that's the context that matters. That's where for BYU this year, Jake, that Utah BYU game, there's going to be a squad show coming out later this week. We both think it's the most important game in the conference. If one of these teams can win that game in an impressive fashion over a team, BYU or Utah, both I think will be top 20, maybe even top 10. We could both be undefeated. You guys will have to take care of Notre Dame. We'll have to have beaten Houston by that point, and you have to beat Arizona too. So there's tough games on the schedule. If you can win that game in convincing fashion, one or the other, that's the type of path that I think could get two Big 12 teams in.
Well, but the other thing about this is you and I both know that this rivalry, these teams are separated by more than 7 points at the end of the day. If something feels off. But you're right. You make a very good point. The biggest thing for BYU, and BYU's acknowledged it. Aaron Roderick acknowledged it earlier this week when he talked to the media. He said, last year we had 5 games where we came from behind to win. And yes, that's going to make people wonder, how good is this team really? But I firmly subscribe to the theory that I think it's Dan from the Solid Verbal talks about. Winning is a skill. Either you find ways to win football games, and winning has to count for something. And that's where it comes down, at least in my mind, looking at BYU, is go out there, handle your business, win as many games as you possibly can, whether it's 10, 11, 12, and then let the chips fall where they may. But the thing about it is, you're right. There does need to be, I guess, a little bit of a style element to BYU's gameplay this year. I just don't think that Kalani Sitake is interested in it whatsoever. It's just not his MO.
Yeah. It's not his MO. BYU, with what they return, belongs above Utah right now. Jake, I think by the end of the year, Utah just might be over them. And I think it might have something to do with what happens at Rice-Eccles Stadium. I'm feeling right now.
You mean 4? 4 is coming?
Oh, no. Oh, gosh. I genuinely think if Utah goes 8-4, but they beat BYU, it's still a success. But if you go like 7-5, 8-4 with a loss to the Cougars, then it'll be a massive disappointment. Like, obviously, Big 12 championship, all that is what you want. But in the grand scheme of things, if things go off the rails and you lose to a 4th time to BYU, that's where it will be a really tough pill, I think, for Utah fans to swallow.
I'm gonna ignite both of our chats right now. I got a question. I want yes or no from you. It's simple as this. Would Utah fans, and I'll answer for BYU momentarily. Yeah. Would Utah fans trade, let's say, 3 losses? So let's say you go 9-3 for a win over BYU. Does that make sense? Would you trade 3 losses for 1 win over the Cougars?
No, but the alternative, I don't get to know the alternative?
Oh, the alternative is, you go 11-1, for example, and you lose to BYU. Does that make sense? Like, you're trading
I hear you.
3 losses for 1 win, like, over your rival. Would you do that?
I think under this circumstance, I actually think they take the 11-1. I think they take another loss to the Cougars, as painful as being. Maybe I'm wrong. Light me up in the comments. I think an 11-win season, because that puts you on the doorstep of history with the playoff. I think Utah fans would be okay with that. What about you guys?
I think in BYU fans' most heart of hearts, I think they would take 9-3 if they curb stomped Utah and kept that streak going. Like I said, drop it in the YouTube comments, reach out via social media, let us know. I do think BYU would trade 3 losses for a win over Utah.
And that would, and then that would be interesting to see, because you beat Utah, but you fall short of those goals. So it's that's the balance.
I'm interested to see how it comes down. I'm sure there'll be Cougar fans who are like, no, I would take 11-1, but hey, I'm interested to see how they feel. Now, I will say this: there will be Cougar fans who would say, okay, you give me 11-1 and the 1 loss is in Notre Dame, I'll accept that, because you're probably still if you hang with Notre Dame, you're probably still in the playoff conversation. But that rivalry win, it stands for a lot, and you know this.
It does. It absolutely does. That's why I mentioned right away. 8-4, but a win over BYU. I think fans can talk themselves being okay, all things considered, this worked out okay. You know what's not okay right now, Jake Hatch? The state of things at BYU right now, and obviously Utah has been in a similar position at times this offseason. What are the state of both athletic directors at Utah and BYU? We're breaking it down next on this Locked On Utes, Locked On Cougars crossover. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concert, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprise fees, buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. That's why so many fans are turning to Game Time. The app is built to make buying tickets simple with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive saving opportunities that help you get to the event you want without the hassle. And what's a bigger hassle than thinking you have a great deal on a ticketing app just to be hit with a bunch of surprise fees at the very end? Not with Game Time. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets, and by giving you upfront price selections, you see how much you're going to pay right away, and you get a panoramic view from your seat, which I absolutely love. So you can be like me and take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON. It's all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Utes and Locked On Cougars your first listen and view of the day. Back in December, things were not great up on the hill. Kyle Whittingham was stepping down, but still coaching. Doesn't even do a retirement press conference from Utah. And boom, he's off to Michigan. And it's just weird. We find out he wanted to stay. Utah was like, okay, you could stay, but all these things will go in place for Morgan Scully, in a way, essentially being like, Morgan's our guy. You should probably look elsewhere. So that's what Kyle ends up doing, of course. And now we get to where we are with BYU, Jake, and I'll let you take it from here. What is going on with Brian Santiago and Kalani Sitake?
Well, just to put it plainly, Brian Santiago is embattled right now in Provo because Kalani Sitake made his comments on Ben Criddle's radio show, essentially saying, we do the most with the least. And that I don't think that was a comment that he had that comment in his back pocket. I believe that because he is trying to get BYU, from everything I understand, he's trying to get BYU simply to live up to the parameters set forth in his contract. Now, whether that's Brian Santiago's call on that front, whether it's BYU administration, whatever the case is, Kalani Sitake feels like he's getting a bit of a raw deal because he loves being at BYU. I trust me. Anybody who knows Kalani Sitake
turned down Penn State.
Exactly. He turned down Penn State, one of the blue bloods of this sport, a Big Ten program that has resources that very few programs can ever dream of having. And BYU, as I understand it, guaranteed him certain things in that deal, and he doesn't believe that BYU has lived up to that. That has brought this thing to a loggerhead that you've got Brian Santiago on one side and you got Kalani Sitake on the other. The situation is, it feels like in so many different ways, the battle that Utah kind of fought with Mark Harlan and Kyle Whittingham. And I guess it comes down to the dynamics, JT. More often than not, the football coach at these high-level universities, Power 4 and the like, they have got more popularity, more power in terms of just the populace, and speaking of the fan base in general, than the athletic director does. But the athletic director typically controls what the future of that football coach's career looks like. And it's an interesting power dynamic right now. And yeah, it's like 6 months ago, Mark Harlan was persona non grata, probably up on the hill with certain people. And right now, down in Provo, Ryan Santiago is in that same spot. I don't think any of this is unprecedented. We have seen this time and time again, multiple football programs, but it's ironic in a way that we've got two athletic directors in the state that have gone seemingly head to head against their head coaches in recent months. And the public battle, more often than not, usually sides with the football coach, which is kind of, my read is the BYU fans, they're kind of siding with Kalani Sitake. But correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like in some ways Utah fans were siding down both sides of this, like maybe a touch more with the athletic department, saying, hey, we've got Morgan Scully, let's turn the page and move on here. But am I wrong in that assessment? Where it's BYU fans, by and large, they're, hey, I stand with Kalani, whereas Utah fans, it felt like there was a bit of a divide between the two sides.
Yeah, I think it has everything to do with Kyle's age on this one. Because obviously, Mark is a very polarizing figure amongst Utah fans. Sure. There are some people who are not a fan of him. You'll get some who are, but a lot of people don't love the decisions and choices he's made. So in this instance, like you said, but a lot of people were siding with Utah to actually go to Morgan than do Kyle. I don't know if it was as much they were siding with Mark. More so, why would we bring an older Whittingham back for a couple of years? Jake, you and I have talked about this before. I'd be stunned if Kyle Whittingham goes 5 more years. Just based on the comments he's made, maybe he will surprise us. I'm stunned he's still coaching, obviously, right now. So he proved me wrong in that regard. But I'd be stunned if he goes another 5 years. And I think Utah fans, it was like, we don't want to lose this guy who's been one of the best defensive coordinators in college football and risk him walking out the door. And I think there was a very real fear of that. And that's why they ended up siding more with the department versus Sitake's young. He's going to be there a very long time, I think, Jake Hatch. And I think that's why you see BYU fans all in on him. And Santiago might be the least popular figure in the state right now.
He very well could be. And there's no doubt about that. I think the other thing about it is, how many other guys could do what Kalani Sitake has done at the helm of the BYU football program? Because they limit their head coaching pool, because you do have to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and you have to be in good standing with the church. You have to have what they call a temple recommend, and you have to be an upstanding church member to be the head coach of the BYU football program. That's just limiting in the fact that there's 17, almost 18 million Mormons worldwide, but how few of those are actually football coaches, and how few of them have the qualifications to be a head coach of a Power 4 program that is competing among, if not at the top of the Big 12. And so that's the interesting dynamic. And you're right. I do think in some ways the Utah dynamic was, okay, we do have this heir apparent. We have the guy that's waiting in the wings here. He's been waiting for his opportunity. And Kyle was apparently willing to step aside, but not without a fight, because he did get $13 million. He's getting 13. Talk about double dipping, by the way, JT. He's getting money from Michigan. He's getting $13 million from Utah. Talk about a win in his world, to be collecting checks from both of the programs he has been the head coach of. But you're right. I do think that Kyle, it's a shorter term run for him. If I'm not mistaken, isn't it the final 2 years of that 5-year deal he signed at Michigan are partially guaranteed, because they're trying to
I think so.
If he decides that 3 years and he decides it's time to step aside. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic where athletic directors, they take a lot of arrows. Mark Harlan has taken a ton of them during his time at Utah. Brian Santiago, he's just just over a year into his tenure as BYU's head coach. And I'll be very blunt. He's already faced a number of storms, but this is the biggest. This one erupted because Kalani went public with it and brought it to the forefront. But athletic directors, it's not an enviable job when you find yourself in a tussle with a head football coach, because that is in many ways a no-win situation, no matter what you do.
And I've said overall, I actually think Mark's done a pretty good job at Utah. I mean, yes, there's things you could say. The Craig Smith hire did not go to plan. Sure, is that really a Mark Harlan thing, or does Utah have a basketball thing that I think is fair? That's why let's see how Morgan and everything goes from here. And look, and the Otro Capital thing is obviously the big thing that this athletic department is going to be judged on moving forward. We'll wait and see how it goes.
Get it right, JT. Crimson Brand Partners.
Thank you. You're right. Crimson Brand Partners.
Like 3 times on that, by the way, Big 12 Media Day. So anyway, Crimson Brand Partners, go ahead.
You got Crimson Brand Partner. I want to get out of here on this one because I am fascinated, Jake, and I haven't heard many people talk about it. Why in the world did Kalani decide to go public now? what, I don't know if you can say what pushed him over the edge, but I think it's so interesting. Like, we're not talking about, hey, it's NIL, like it's time to go recruit a great roster to replenish and retool. Why now? It just seemed like an interesting time.
Maybe it's been months and months in the making where he's asked repeatedly, hey, I need this. And the thing about it is, Kalani's not thinking of number one in this circumstance.
No.
That's far from it. He's thinking about his staff. He's thinking about his players. He wants the people around him that have helped give BYU the success they've had. He wants them to get what was promised to them in addition to other things that I'm sure they're in the contract. My opinion, this is like reading between the lines. I think he has made probably repeated requests to Brian Santiago and BYU administration saying, hey, just live up to the parameters of this deal. And for whatever reason, that has not happened. And I think he finally got fed up with it and said, you know what? Let's put some public pressure on these guys. And he just so happened to use Ben Criddle's show as his public platform to do just that.
He did. And now it's caused quite the stir. And it's very interesting.
And the other thing is, so I'll just add this. He went to BYU team photo day, which was his first appearance after that blew up. And I was expecting him to walk up and say, guys, I said what I said. I have no further comment. What does he do? He doubles down. He says, hey, my agents handle that. You can talk to my agent. That's another. So I think that Kalani, he is pressing the screws to Brian Santiago and BYU administration, but I don't think it comes from him being vindictive. It's not him trying to stick it to BYU. Simply put, Kalani Sitake, as he said, he wants to win. He wants to win at a high level, and he wants the resources. And that doesn't just mean money. It's just the resources in general. He talks about flexibility. He wants to have everything he needs, he feels like, to compete among the nation's best.
You're absolutely right. By the way, I just love the quote when he was asked about his relationship with Brian Santiago. I'm easy to get along with as much as you take care of my players. Could you imagine if someone was like, "Do you like Jake Hatch? I'm easy to work with as long as someone's good to podcast with." Or something like, you would just be honest. No, but it was just like, yeah, like you said, he doubled down in a big way.
So my opinion is that this has been months in the making, and he finally just decided, you know what, I need to use the public. And Utah fans, if you know Kyle Whittingham's history, he has used public pressure. He used it multiple times during his run at Utah. We do not have the time for me to rehash at least 3 instances where I know people that I know personally were used as pawns in his own game.
Yeah, it's great. It's a crazy thing the way you see college coaches manage and maneuver around things. And the biggest thing I'm just fired up about, Jake, is, hey, we're talking about these controversies now, but at the end of the day, we're so close to football. It's going to be an awesome season, I think, for both Utah and BYU. Can't wait for the Holy War. And always great talking with you. Make sure you guys go over, give him a follow. Jake Hatch on. I always backwards. What's your X handle again?
It's at Jake Hatch. We finally got the one I've been chasing.
Oh, you did. Okay, there you go.
So yeah, do that. Follow the show on social media, Locked On Cougars as well. And of course, I'll recommend to Utah fans, JT. He's a good dude. People ask me all the time, you and JT actually get along? Yes, we do, everybody. So check it out. Locked On Utes, Locked On Cougars, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, also available on YouTube. And, I know a lot of you like to cross over and watch each other's shows, so please continue to do just that.
And remember, he said we do get along, regardless of what you're going to see on our squad show Thursday. We do get along. Jake, always great talking with you, man. See ya.
Absolutely.
That's going to do it for our crossover show. Make sure you check out each of our shows for your second list of View of the Day. And we'll be back with you soon talking more Utes and Cougars.